I'm Dr. Brad Hafford, archaeologist at the University of Pennsylvania Museum, and I'm here in the Near East study room with my summer intern. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Nathaniel Erb. I'm an intern here at the Penn Museum for the summer. I go to Catholic University and I'm studying classical civilizations and anthropology.
Internship, we have been looking into the data from our 2022 season at Ur. We are trying to understand a building that we're uncovering there. It's probably a house, domestic space, and we've gotten artifacts from it. We've gotten broken pieces for the most part. We're looking at photographs and theories about things. So today we're going to be looking at objects that are similar to what we'd found there. These come from the excavations that were much earlier, from Sir Leonard Woolley's work from the 1920s and 30s. But there's a difference in looking at photographs, since we don't bring anything back anymore, compared to the actual objects. And so I wanted you to be able to get that experience of holding the objects and thinking about the theories that we've been studying. You know, what are these objects used for? So we're looking primarily at figurines today, because we found two broken figurines in the square that you're examining. Square 6. So what do you think about these? So for instance, let's look at this object first, and we'll compare it to this one. So first of all, what are they? What are they depicting?
Well, they appear to depict nude women. This one is holding, appears to be a child.
Right. Yes, she's holding an infant, and that's somewhat different from everything we've seen before. In Square 6, we had a female figurine, but it's broken. And do you think that that one might have been holding a child?
From what I've seen, it doesn't appear to be.
Right.
It appears to be, her hands appear to be folded at her chest.
Right, so it's badly eroded, right?
Yeah.
But we can tell that her hands really are down here, not holding anything in that case. So this one does hold something. This one probably does not. Her hands are clasped about here.
Right below her chest.
Is that more similar to ours?
Yes.
And then we've got one other example.
And yeah, her hands are also folded right below her chest. She has an elaborate necklace, looks like earrings as well, and another elaborate hairdo.
So which one's the most similar to the one that we have found?
Say this one. I'm unsure if the one that we found, she's wearing a necklace or not. It's that badly eroded.
It's so, yeah, you can't really see much of anything. Even the hair is a little hard to tell.
It is. It's hard to tell where the hair and shoulders start.
Right. But it does look to me like she's got a fairly large hairdo that goes out, and that's different from some of the ones that have a somewhat narrower but have more curls, like at the shoulders. This one is kind of above it, almost Princess Leia-like or something. Not quite, but having a lot of hair there. So we've talked about the difference between figurines and plaques. Which are these, do you think?
Well, these would be plaques because they have this large back.
Yeah. And that, why? How are they made?
Well, these would have been pressed into a mold.
Exactly. And so this extra clay that's on the sides that makes this backing, the background, is what makes it a plaque rather than an actual modeled figurine in the round. And in the back we've got just flat or rounded clay, because that's what was pushed down into the mold. So what time period do you think they come from?
Well, from what I read, molds start to be used around the Ur 3 period, maybe a little after that. So between Ur 3 and Old Babylonian?
Probably. We know that there are some plaques or mold pressed in the Ur 3. They're not common at that time period.
Okay.
Most of those are hand modeled. So these could be at the end of the Ur 3 or later, as they become more and more common to push something into a mold rather than to hand model it. And the form We talked about the hair, for instance. This hair, very big with lots of curls or something there, is, you see that in the Orthria a lot. And you see that in the Isin as well, and this is plaque type. So yeah, I think we've got early Old Babylonian stuff here, and the one that we've got is probably from about the same time period. But this one is different. Although it's made similarly, it is pushed into a mold. She's holding an infant. And you don't see that as much in the Old Babylonian as you do in the Neo-Babylonian.
Okay.
So this one is probably later. It's one of the ideas that these meant something about fertility because she's holding a baby. Mm-hmm. But most don't hold babies. Most seem to have a reverence, a prayer attitude. So, let's go into the complicated theories of how they might have been used and what they meant. What do you think is the most likely?
Well, there's another theory that they are for healing purposes, and they could be intentionally broken and used to kind of remove the sickness from the body.
In a magic ritual, if someone's ill, you might use something like this to transfer their illness into the replica person, and then break that to get rid of the illness. There's the joke that all archaeologists, if they don't understand something, it's ritual.
Yeah.
But ritual did play a role, it still plays a role in our lives today, and it is hard to understand because it's in the minds and the culture of the people, and we don't always understand that. I could see them as being a sort of focus of attention. I mean, yeah, it fits in the hands and you can look at it and think about it. Maybe a focus for prayer. Maybe the woman with the child is more like, I'm hoping for a healthy baby, I'm asking the gods for it, perhaps. And why would they put them in a mold? Why did they start making molds, do you think, rather than doing the hand modeling that had been so common in the earlier periods?
For mass production, most likely.
It's faster. It's probably takes a lot to make a mold, I think.
Yeah.
But then you can make a lot of them, putting impressions in. So yeah, I think that part of it is to get more out there. They were popular. People wanted these things. They are quite common. But they're not typically found in graves, which is an interesting thing for Mesopotamia. In many cultures you do find figurines in graves, and they might mean something in that aspect, but here we find broken pieces everywhere, especially in trash pits, and that does imply that these are thrown away because they have served their purpose. Maybe they have been used in a healing ritual and now they're thrown away. But I don't know that they were always used the same way. One thing we know about the Neo-Babylonian period, though, is we've got a lot more texts that tell us something about rituals. And sometimes even things that have inscriptions on the figurine. Like you'll get a figurine of a dog, and it says, "Stay away, evil spirits." So it's a guard dog. It's metaphorically keeping away bad things by guarding my house. And those are typically found buried underneath a threshold, so nothing bad can come in. So there is a symbolic nature to at least the later ones. We can prove that because they're written in. And we assume that some of the earlier ones must have had a somewhat similar purpose. I don't think that they have to be fertility related just because it's a woman. Even when she's holding a baby, it doesn't have to be fertility related. But infant mortality was high. Deaths during birth were high with the mother. And most of their thinking in the ancient world was that these were due to evil spirits, and the way that we can try to treat that is to get rid of those evil spirits, because they didn't understand disease and other problems that could happen. So they could feel like they're doing something with these magic rituals. So yeah, we can see a development in style, but the concept seems to be fairly constant. And I wanted to look at this object. Put those in. One that we haven't really seen, but I think you'll probably figure out what it is. So look there and tell me what you think.
This is really odd.
Mm-hmm.
It has some sort of crystal growth on it.
Yeah, probably salts that come out of the clays. I guess describe it in general. What is it made of? What does it feel like?
It's clay.
Mhm.
This face side is smooth, whereas this inside area is rough, lumpy.
And it's pretty thick.
Yeah. Is this some sort of ceiling?
Similar in some ways, right? So what is a ceiling?
Well, a ceiling would be used for ceiling items. Would be clay. You'd take a cylinder seal, you'd roll it over the ceiling. You'd seal packages, boxes, doors,
Right.
jars.
Something on which a seal has been rolled across to make an impression. So you're seeing an impression, but a very deep impression of something.
Yeah, I can't tell.
Well, what if it was something like that?
Is that a mold?
It is.
Okay.
It's a mold for making a figurine. But it's a broken one, so the
I
rest of
see
the
it
body
now.
would have been down
Yeah.
there. Yeah, it's hard to see because it's inverted.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Now, this is not the same figurine, but it's similar size. But
Oh,
now,
yeah,
when
yeah.
you look, you
Yeah, I
might see
the
eyes and hair.
Yep.
It's a female figurine mold. So, we talked about them making this, and that's a way that we know they did it, you know, and not only do we see the result, we've got the thing into which they were pressed.
Okay.
And I think that's fascinating because this is all about not just the object, but its manufacturing process. And I think most of these, and certainly that, came from Diktiga, which is just outside of Ur. And a lot of the objects we're finding are figurines or the things to make them. So we think they were actually manufacturing clay figurines out there. And they were so popular that they would make a lot of them and then use them in the city for whatever they were used for. But they are very popular. So we had a female figurine from Square 6, but we also had another one.
Yep.
And what did we call that one?
There's a male figurine and a striding king.
Right. Striding figure, striding king, that usually is. And now this one I think is pretty close to what we have.
Yeah, it looks similar. It's
Yeah, so describe this and the other one that we've got.
male figure. He's wearing tunic, cap, a long beard.
We've seen that kind of position on an earlier artifact that I showed you. Do you remember what that was?
It's a stele.
It was the stele of? Do you remember?
Do not.
Naram Sin.
No, I'm saying, okay.
Yeah, so he was the son of Manishtushu, who was the son of Sargon. So Naram Sin was the grandson of Sargon, the great Akkad. So this was in the Akkadian period. And he, in that depiction, he's very big, you know, and he's climbing the mountain, and all the Lulubi are the people that he's defeating, and they're so it's a victory stele. He's won a battle. And in this case, we don't see a battle, but the positioning of him looks somewhat similar. And in fact, it's almost like in this case, the one foot seems to be kind of elevated above the other as if he might be progressing up something. Mm-hmm. What about the one we have? It's broken. We don't have the upper half, right?
Yeah, we don't have the upper half. We don't have any idea if he's holding anything.
That's true.
But
We don't see his hands.
Yeah. So we just have his waist downward.
Right, and he's in that striding pose, so it's moving.
Yep.
They're not really going up, but there is something beneath him. What did we think that was?
Depictions of mountains, most likely.
It looks like it. He's on a almost pedestal, but the carving or with the design, it looks almost like fish scales, but that's how they depicted mountainous terrain. So we think he is traversing the mountains. Maybe it's harking back to the idea of battles in the mountains. These could be aids to storytelling. The female ones could be too. I don't know. But to me it feels almost like, I don't know, if this is the king, and his hat would imply that,
Yeah.
it's this sort of thing. It would be a way to tell the stories about great kings of the past. And then you could say, well, kids, here he is marching into the mountains, and that way it's not just in your mind's eye. You know, they couldn't call up a picture from Google or whatever and show it on the computer. They had maybe these sorts of things. And there are ones that have multiple figures on. So I brought one in, which is, well, somewhat similar, but it's one that we can talk about more. You see, I think, why I compare it to the figure on the right, at least.
Yeah.
Similar form. He's striding,
And
and
he's holding a mace, it looks like.
yep, mace or scepter or whatever that is. It's probably a symbol of power.
And there's this figure on the left large headdress. Perhaps this is a figure of a god.
It is, and that headdress does tell us that. It's a bit hard to tell, but there are kind of tiers here. Those are tiers of horns. The horned headdress is indicating the divine. The hands of this deity are up, and maybe this is blessing the striding figure, saying you will have success or something like this. But again, it's a story here. I don't think it's the sort that you would break. It's not an individual, it's two people. And maybe they could say, this is the story of when the king was blessed to go forth. Okay, so we have looked at a lot of figurines today. I hope you've learned something.
I did.
Enjoyed it a bit. That's, getting the feel for these things instead
Yeah.
of just looking at them, I think is important. And for me, I think probably for you too, just being able to really look at it, feel and think about an object that's 4,000 years old. It's just amazing. So, all right, well, I hope that everyone else has learned things too, and I hope that you will join us again next time on Artifactually Speak.